17 years. That's how long I had called that house my home. The pale blue walls we had painted together when we were newly married, the oak tree in the backyard we planted when our first child was born, the small crack in the kitchen ceiling from the night a storm almost tore the roof away. Every corner carried a memory. Every room had a piece of my life inside it. And yet, on that cold Tuesday evening, my wife stood in the doorway with her arms crossed and told me to leave. "I want you out, Farhan, tonight." Her voice was calm, almost rehearsed. No tears, no shaking, just finality. I thought she was angry. We had argued before about money, about the kids, about how distant we had both become. 17 years of marriage was never smooth, but we had always found our way back to each other. I expected shouting, maybe even silence. I didn't expect eviction. "What do you mean out?" I asked, trying to laugh it off. "It's my house too." She looked past me, not into my eyes. Not anymore. That was when something cold slid down my spine. She handed me a small suitcase, already packed, my clothes, my documents, even my old wristwatch was inside. "I've made arrangements," she said. "You can stay with your brother or wherever you want, but you can't stay here." "Are you serious?" I whispered. "We need to talk, at least tell me what I did." Her jaw tightened. "I've done my talking for years, now I'm done." I wanted to argue, I wanted to beg, but something in her face told me this decision wasn't born today. It had been growing quietly while I was busy working late, paying bills, believing our marriage was stable just because it was old. I walked out. No shouting, no scene, just the sound of the door closing behind me like the end of a chapter I didn't know was ending. 3 hours later, the sheriff knocked. I was sitting in my brother's living room, staring at a cup of tea I hadn't touched. My phone buzzed. "Unknown number." "Mr. Farhan Khan," a deep voice said. "Yes." "This is Sheriff Malik from the county office. We need to speak with you regarding a complaint filed by your wife." My heart dropped. "A complaint? She has filed for an emergency protective order and claims you are refusing to leave the marital residence and that she feels unsafe." I almost laughed in disbelief. "I left, she threw me out." "There are also allegations of financial manipulation and emotional abuse. We'll need you to come in tomorrow morning." The words hit me like stones. Abuse. After 17 years of providing, protecting, sacrificing. I barely slept that night. The next morning, I sat in a small gray office while papers were placed in front of me. My wife had filed for exclusive occupancy of the house, temporary custody of our teenage daughter, and a restraining order based on claims that I had become unstable and controlling. I felt like I was watching someone else's life unravel. "Why is she doing this?" I asked. The sheriff sighed. "Divorce turns people into strangers, Mr. Khan, sometimes into enemies." When I returned to my brother's house, there was a message waiting on my phone, a voice note from my daughter. "Dad, Mom says you left us. She says you don't want us anymore. Is that true?" That broke me more than the sheriff's knock ever could. I called my wife, she didn't answer. Days passed, then weeks. Lawyers' papers, court dates. And slowly the truth began to surface. My wife had been planning this for months. She had transferred joint savings into a separate account. She had spoken to a lawyer before speaking to me. She had prepared a story where she was the victim and I was the villain. Why? Because she had fallen in love with someone else. A coworker, younger, promising her a new life. And in order to start that life, she needed to erase me from the picture, not just as a husband, but as a father, as a presence, as a voice. The protective order was dismissed when the judge saw the lack of evidence. The financial records revealed the hidden transfers. The truth, slow and painful, began to win. But the damage had already been done. My daughter had believed I abandoned her. My reputation had been stained. My home was no longer mine. One afternoon, months later, I stood across from my wife in court. She looked smaller than I remembered, not powerful, not victorious, just tired. The judge spoke firmly. This court does not take false allegations lightly. Her new relationship had already collapsed. The man who promised her freedom didn't want responsibility. And now she sat alone, facing consequences she never imagined. After the session, she approached me. "I never meant to hurt you this much," she said softly. I looked at her, the woman I had loved for 17 years, the mother of my child, the stranger who had called the sheriff on me. Intent doesn't erase damage, I replied. I walked away. Today, I live in a small apartment. It's quiet, peaceful. I see my daughter every weekend. She knows the truth now. She hugs me tightly every time she leaves, as if afraid someone might take me away again. Sometimes I think about that night, about the suitcase, the closed door, and the knock that came 3 hours later. It wasn't just the sheriff who knocked. It was reality. And it taught me something painful but powerful. You can give someone your youth, your loyalty, your entire life, and still become disposable in their story. But when the truth finally stands, it stands stronger than any lie ever could.